المسألة السادسة, or the sixth affair, is that in this hadith there is an evidence forbidding the keeping of dogs in the house or to take them as pets. And this is something that is proven from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam disallowed the keeping of a dog except for one of three purposes, or any of the well-known three purposes. So in those three states it is allowed to keep a dog. And those three states being, it is allowed to keep a dog for hunting. It is allowed to keep a dog to shepherd cattle and sheep. A sheepdog basically, or to shepherd cattle. And it is allowed to keep a dog to guard the land, to guard one's land. So it is allowed only in these three situations. As for taking a dog, or taking dogs, as some of the people do in imitation of the kuffar, they say that the Westerners do it, so we're going to copy them because that is a sign of progress. Or that a person keeps a dog as a hobby or a pastime, as the people do, again in imitation of the kuffar, making taqleed of the kuffar. That the kuffar, they keep dogs, and then they, it is well known how they behave with respect to their dogs, such that they invent terms such as a dog is a man's best friend and so on. Then some of the Muslims, that they have imitated the kuffar in that. And this is something that is not permitted. Naam. So the kuffar, that they are passionate about keeping dogs as pets, and they keep them as companions, and they will call the dog their best friend. As they say, a man's best friend is his dog. So this is the way of the kuffar, such that they will eat alongside the dog, or the dog will eat with them. So when they eat, the dog is eating next to them, maybe even from the same vessel. Or they will lift out the vessel and put it into the mouth of the dog. And this is something that is commonplace amongst the kuffar. And they consider the dog as a member of the family. So when she's asked them, how many people are in your family? They will say 5. So they'll mention himself, his wife, the 2 children, and the dog is the 5th. So they will consider him as a member of the family. And this is not something that we say as just a mockery or as jesting. They actually consider their dogs, many of the kuffar, as intimate members of the family. And they will sleep with them at the base of the bed. Not on the floor, but on the quilt. So the person is sleeping in his bed, and at the foot of the bed, on the mattress, there is the dog curled up. And this is the intimacy that they have with their dogs. Such as Shaykh al-Fawzan, he mentions here, that when some of them they die, that they leave a legacy for their dogs as inheritance when they die, so that the dog inherits from their wealth. As for the Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them honor and raised them higher than to behave like this. And Allah has honored them and given them respect. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden them from keeping companionship with dogs. It is more befitting that you keep companionship, barakallahu feekum, with the righteous and the humans. So, the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden this type of companionship with dogs, such that the dog is inside of the house and so on, this is due to the harm that comes about by keeping dogs. For example, a dog is not like a cat. A dog, if it is in the company of, for example, a child, a baby, then it is possible that the dog will kill that baby. And this has happened in the UK, and it is not something that is rare to the extent that it is unnoticeable. It is something that happens several times a year, that a child has been torn apart by the pet dog. So the mother brings the child home from the hospital, and she leaves the child in the cot, and the door is open, and the dogs, they roam around the house, and the dog will tear apart the child and consume it, or maul it, to the point that it becomes a fatal attack upon a baby. Because a dog is unpredictable, and it is not something that can be controlled with such ease. So there is harm in keeping dogs in this manner. But that does not mean that the dog does not have a role, meaning amongst human beings and in the company of human beings, the domesticated dog, such as, for example, hunting, guarding, and shepherding. Because these are roles that a dog can be utilized for, just as a horse is utilized, and other creatures, an oxen is utilized. So creatures are utilized, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, many of them, that those that can be domesticated, that they are used, like camels and donkeys and mules and so on. But each one for its purpose. For example, you would not ride on the back of a cow from one village to the next. And that happened in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a man, he tried to ride on the back of a cow. So the cow turned to the man and he said, "This is not for which I was created." So the man said, "How strange is that? A cow that talks?" So the cow said, "I will tell you something that is even more amazing than that there is a prophet who has appeared in Medina." So, referring to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given creatures their purpose. So it is not as if we say that the dog has no purpose and no ability to aid the human beings. But the role of the dog is not to keep the dog as a member of the family. Because the dog has with it impurities, as we have mentioned. That the impurity of the dog is so severe that it needs that the vessel that the dog licks into must be washed 7 times. And the first washing is to be done with soil. So it shows that the impurity of the saliva of the dog, at the very least, it is something that is severe in impurity. And due to the fact that which the dog has, by way of its saliva, that it has by way of, to keep a dog in this manner, knowing that it has these impurities, is something that is lowly. There is within that lowliness. So Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he forbade the Muslims from keeping dogs, except in these 3 well-known situations that we have mentioned, which is hunting and guarding, meaning guarding your land, and shepherding. So these are the 3 situations wherein which a dog can be kept, as we have mentioned. Furthermore, there is harm in keeping a dog, especially in one's house, due to the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the angels will not enter a home in which there is a dog or there is an image. The hadith reported by Bukhari and Muslim.